Hi, and welcome to Guitar Landscapes. We're on page 43 in Guitar Landscapes today, and we're going to be talking about sus2 chords. The first chord written in the book there on that page is the A sus2. And what we're looking at when we play that chord is the root, the second, and then the fifth. And that chord, since it has no third in it, no A minor, which would have a C note in it, or A major, which would have a C sharp in it, there's nothing in this chord that tells you whether it's major or minor. So it's a very open sounding chord. It's not committed to being a happy sound like a major sound or a sad sound like a minor sound. It's much like the sus4 chord that we'll talk about later, which has the fourth in it, the D note. It also has a very up in the air kind of sound. When you hear those two chords, there's the 2, there's the 4. It doesn't really tell you whether we're going to a major chord or a minor chord next until I hit a C note. And that C note suddenly tells you that we've changed to a minor sound. I could do those same two chords and go to a major sound, C sharp. And you can see it has a much different effect. So these sus2 chords have a very airy kind of open feel to them, as opposed to what we call the A add 9 chord on the next page, which is this guy. Now with this particular chord, I'm playing an A chord and I'm adding the 9th to it. So I'm adding a B to it. I'm adding the B here on the 3rd string at the 4th fret. So that would be like playing a regular old A major chord and just putting a B in there as well. And you have to have the C sharp in this A add 9 to get that sound. So it's different than a sus2, or what some people call a sus9, which may be a little bit incorrect, because 9s usually want to tell you that there's a third in the chord. But this particular guy right here, A add 2 or A add 9, is really the same chord. You've got an A chord and you're either adding the 9th or you're adding the 2, which is a B note. So that's a different kind of sounding chord. Just like an A minor add 9 would be a minor triad, an A minor triad with a B added to it, or an add 2, same thing. So let's look at the harmonized C major scale now, up the neck using these chords. And the voicing I've chosen to use for this is going to be root, 5th, root, 2, and then 5th again. So you've got the power chord kind of sound in the bottom, and then you've got the sus2 sound in the top. And I'm going to use that same voicing all the way up the neck and remain diatonic within the notes of the C major scale. So we get C sus2, D sus2, and now this E is a little strange. This is an E5 add F, or you could also say add flat 2. And then we have F sus2, G sus2, A sus2 way up here at the 12th fret, which you could also play down here in open position. So there's your A sus2. And then this guy is kind of strange as well, because it sounds great. It's a great sounding chord. You've got a B, omit 3, flat 5, add C, or add flat 2. So what I've got is the root, the flatted 5th, the root, there's my 2, which is a flatted 2 in this case, because we're remaining diatonic to your C note. And then here's another F note, another flatted 5th. Great sounding chord. And then we're back to the C sus2 sound. So that's the C major scale harmonized in sus2 kind of voicing. So you can hear those are the most common kind of voicings you're going to hear with that. You're not going to hear this one a lot, even though maybe you should. What a great sound. But that's the nice thing about taking voicings like this and trying to harmonize them and move them up the fingerboard. You can come up with some sounds that you really fall in love with that maybe you haven't heard on your favorite albums and might inspire you to write some music of your own. Well, the next thing we're going to take a quick peek at here on page 45 is the Augmented Triad. And all it really is just when you take a major triad and you raise the fifth. So for instance, here's a C chord. I've got C, E, G, C. Now, if I decide to raise the fifth on it, that will make this an augmented chord. And that's what happens anytime we raise a perfect interval. And remember, fifth is a perfect fifth. We usually say just fifth as a shortcut, and everyone knows that it's a perfect fifth. But when we raise a perfect interval, like a fifth or a fourth, it becomes augmented. So, this G note, if I raise it 1 fret, now I'm going to play a G sharp. And there you go. It sounds like the beginning to a lot of R&B and blues kind of songs. And then you immediately go into the next chord. So it gives you that kind of opening dominant chord sound, which we'll talk about more a little bit later. That's usually the way this chord functions, is as a dominant chord. So it's just a root, a third, and a raised fifth, or an augmented fifth. And the voicings I've given you in the book are for C, and for F, and then for G, and then I gave you this one for B flat. Now the nice thing about augmented chords is they are actually, every note inside that chord is a major third away from the next note. And so that means that if you do the math on this, you'll find out that any one of the notes in the chord could be called the root, because they're all equal distance away from each other. So this could be a C augmented chord, it could be an E augmented chord, or it could be a G sharp augmented chord. So I'll let you figure that out on your own for now. We'll dig into that a little bit more later on when we get to the whole tone scale. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. There's some great stuff here if you've never been exposed to it. And even if you have been exposed to some of this, it's always good to look at it with different eyes. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Make sure you go to the website Guitar-Gps.com and pick up the workbook to help you work through this material. Also, you can pick up the book, Guitar Landscapes, at the site as well if you don't already have it. Thanks a lot for joining in, and I'll see you on the next video.